Darkness covered half the earth when the signal was sent. The world had already fallen apart. Cities swallowed by dust, oceans turned against their shores, and the skies cracked open with silent fire. Commander Lyra stood in the control room of the orbital station Sol Watch, her eyes fixed on the blue planet below. It used to be beautiful once. Now it looked tired, almost ready to give up. She pressed a single red button. A sound burst out into the cold vacuum. A desperate SOS coded in every known language, carrying Earth's final message. "This is humanity. We are dying. Please, anyone." The words echoed into the void, vanishing beyond the solar winds. For a moment it seemed pointless. The universe was too big, too silent. Who would ever hear them? The station trembled as power flickered. Lyra's crewmates, only a handful left, moved slowly like ghosts. No one spoke. They knew this was not just a call for help, it was a goodbye. Earth had no armies left, no nations, no hope. The oceans had risen. Crops had failed. Diseases had burned through billions. The stars above looked cold, indifferent, yet far beyond human imagination. Deep in a part of space where even light feared to go, something stirred. On Cryon 7, a world known only in whispers, a death world, machines woke from their deep slumber. They were not built by humans. They were ancient, brutal, alive. The SOS reached them like a faint heartbeat. Vikar, a warrior born under the acid storms of Cryon 7, lifted his head from a forge of molten rock. His armor glowed red from heat, his eyes burning like two suns. The hum of the signal reached his mind through the neural network that connected every Deathworlder. For a moment, the great warrior froze. The voice he heard was soft, trembling, yet filled with something strange. Something not even the Deathworlders had. It was not fear. It was hope. "Who dares call to the stars?" Vakar murmured. His lieutenants, massive beings of steel and bone, looked at each other. "It is a weak world," one said. "Let it die." But Vakar shook his head. "Weak does not mean unworthy. There is something in this voice." Back on the station, Lyra watched the transmission log flicker. The message had reached over 700 relay nodes before fading into unknown space. That meant it traveled far, beyond the charts, beyond the territories known to the Galactic Council. She did not know what existed out there. No one did. But in that moment, she prayed that something, anything, had heard them. Below, Earth burned quietly. In New Berlin, people gathered around holographic shrines. In the remains of Tokyo, a child looked up at the night sky, whispering a name he did not remember. In the deserts of what was once Africa, winds carried the ashes of old cities. Humanity had learned silence, had learned pain, but not surrender. Hours passed. Then the impossible happened. The receiver at Sol Watch blinked once. A return signal. Lyra froze. Every person in the control room stared as the monitor filled with unreadable symbols. "Is that from Earth?" one asked. "No," she said quietly. "It is from outside," the signal repeated, growing stronger. The station system strained to translate it. The sound that followed was deep, rough, and ancient, like a creature that had not spoken in centuries. It said only 3 words. "We heard you." Lyra felt her blood turn cold. "Who are you?" she whispered, sending the message back. The reply took almost an hour to arrive. "We are the Deathworlders," the voice said. "You called the stars." "We answer." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Stories of Deathworlds had always been treated as legends, places where gravity crushed ships, where every living thing was a predator, where war was life. No one believed such worlds could exist, yet now one of them had answered Earth's cry. Lyra replayed the message over and over. The tone was strange, not comforting, not kind. It was curious, almost amused. But it was proof that someone, somewhere, was listening. The signal was not a goodbye anymore. It was an opening. She turned toward the window. The stars shimmered, endless and unknowable. Somewhere among them, an entire civilization had just awakened because of Earth's SOS. She felt a shiver crawl down her spine. "Commander," her engineer said softly, "should we send another message?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, tell them who we are. Tell them what is left." The transmission began again. This time it carried more than words. It carried data, images, history, music, and the faces of millions who still believed there was something beyond dying light. It was humanity laid bare. On Cryon 7, Vikar and his council watched the human broadcast with silent fascination. They saw the fragile bodies, the desperate eyes, the children holding on to each other in shelters. They had never seen a species so broken and yet so alive. To the Deathworlders, who measured strength only through survival, humanity's message was not weakness, it was defiance. This world refuses to die, Vakar said, his voice echoing through the war halls. Perhaps they are worth our time. The Deathworlder fleets began to move. Ancient engines roared for the first time in millennia, shaking the ground of Creon 7. The stars above dimmed as ships blacker than night rose from their volcanic ports. And far above Earth, Commander Lyra's console blinked again. A final transmission came through, a line of text that made her step back in shock. "We are coming." The words glowed on the screen, silent and powerful. For the first time in years, Lyra smiled faintly. Humanity's cry had reached the monsters of the stars, and now the universe would never be the same. The wind on Creon 7 howled like a living beast, tearing through black canyons of stone and ash. Lightning carved across a blood-red sky while molten rivers moved beneath cracked ground. It was a planet where weakness meant death and strength was the only law. The Deathworlders had survived for centuries here, but nothing had ever drawn them to look beyond their cursed horizon, until the human signal came. Inside the fortress of Valkar Forge, built from the bones of ancient creatures, Commander Vakar stood on a metal balcony staring at the dark horizon. The human voice still echoed in his mind. It was soft but filled with strange courage. He could not forget the words, "This is humanity. We are dying, please, anyone." Deathworlders did not understand the word please. They never begged. They demanded, fought, and took. Yet there was something about this tone that unsettled them. The humans had spoken to the stars not as conquerors, but as survivors refusing to surrender. That made them interesting. Behind Vakar, giant warriors and hunters gathered in the war hall. The air smelled of smoke and iron. Hundreds of glowing eyes fixed on him as he raised one heavy hand. "A small world," he began, "called Earth dares to speak to the void. They cry not for mercy, but for life," the crowd murmured. Some laughed, their voices deep and harsh. "Let them rot," one said. "Why should we care for weak flesh?" Another added, "If they cannot endure their own planet, they do not deserve to live." Vakar's gaze silenced them. "You do not understand," he said slowly. "They are weak, yes, but they are still alive. Against all odds, they endure storms, fire, hunger, and yet they sing, they build, they fight. That is strength of a different kind." A tall female warrior stepped forward, her armor glowing blue. Her name was Kara, a tactician feared even among Deathworlders. "You wish to travel beyond Creon 7 for this?" she asked. "The last time our kind left this world, the stars burned for centuries." Vakar looked at her and smiled, a slow, dangerous curve of his lips. "Then perhaps it is time they burn again." He walked to the great forge at the center of the hall, placing his hand on a molten panel that displayed the faint human signal pulsing in red light. "Prepare the ships," he ordered. "We go to the world called Earth." Far above the planet, in orbit filled with thunder and debris, ancient warships came alive. They had been buried for generations, locked away after the last great war of the Deathworlders. The hulls were scarred, the engines growled like dying beasts, but they still lived. One by one, the black silhouettes lifted through the atmosphere, leaving behind trails of fire. Kara watched from the control deck as the fleet assembled. "If the Council learns of this," she said, "they will come for us." "They will not stop us," Vakar replied. "Let them try." In a distant region of the galaxy, the Galactic Council received the first energy reading from Creon 7. The alarms in their crystal towers screamed. The Deathworlders, creatures of legend feared by all, were moving again. Worlds began to panic. Communication lines burned with frantic orders. Contain them. Intercept them. Do not let them reach the human system. But it was too late. The Deathworlders moved like storms, silent and unstoppable. On the human orbital station, Commander Lyra had not slept in 2 days. The message from the unknown species still played on the monitor. "We are coming." No one believed it at first. The Galactic Council sent no reply, no help. Earth's allies had abandoned them long ago. But the signal was real. The machines confirmed its coordinates, and they were moving fast. Lyra stood beside the window as the stars shimmered faintly. She thought of her mother who had died during the droughts. She thought of the people below still fighting to survive in ruined cities. "If they truly come," she whispered, "let them see what we are." Days later, the sky above Mars turned black. The first Deathworlder ship appeared, massive enough to block the sun. The red planet shook from the pressure of its engines. Humans in the colony dome screamed in fear as the shadow passed overhead. "Contact," the comms officer shouted. "Incoming transmission!" Lyra's heart raced as she accepted it. The screen flickered, then showed a figure unlike anything human. Vacar's face filled the display, framed in jagged armor and battle scars. His eyes glowed like twin embers. "This is Commander Vacar of Crayon 7, he said in a voice that made the air vibrate. "We have heard your call. The galaxy calls you weak, but we came to see if it is true." Lyra swallowed hard. "Commander Lyra of Earth," she replied. "You received our SOS. We asked for help, not judgment." Vacar leaned closer to the screen. "Help must be earned. Prove your world still breathes. Show us why you should survive." The connection cut abruptly, leaving silence behind. Inside the control room, Lyra felt both anger and fear. "He wants us to prove we deserve to live," she whispered. "We already are," but deep inside she understood his words. The Deathworlders were not saviors. They were tests. As the Deathworlder fleet drifted toward Earth's orbit, the Galactic Council prepared to intervene. Fleets from 3-star nations gathered, forming a blockade at the edge of the solar system. They were terrified. The last time the Deathworlders moved, dozens of empires vanished, yet Vacar ignored them. He watched the small blue planet growing in his viewport and said quietly, "They remind me of us long ago, before the fire, before the fall." Kara approached. "Then why come here?" "Because," Vacar answered, "sometimes strength hides in those the universe has already buried." The Deathworlder ships cut through the void, black and silent. No one could stop them, and as Earth rotated slowly below, Commander Lyra knew the universe was changing. The monsters had awakened, drawn not by conquest but by curiosity. And somewhere deep inside she felt something dangerous. Hope. The sun had barely risen when the sky over Earth turned dark. Shadows spread across the clouds as the Deathworlder fleet entered orbit. Their ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Vast, jagged, and alive with moving metal that seemed to breathe. Lightning rippled across their black hulls, making the clouds glow red. Every human radar went blind. Satellites blinked out one by one, and for the first time in history, the stars themselves looked afraid. Commander Lyra stood in the control room of Sol Watch, her heart pounding as static filled every channel. "They are here," whispered her second officer. The words felt heavy. No one on the station moved. They just stared at the giant shapes above the planet, each ship large enough to erase a city. Then a signal came through. No language, no code, just a pulse, slow and rhythmic like a heartbeat. The AI translator strained to interpret it. After long seconds, words appeared on the screen. "We have arrived. Humanity will be tested." Lyra's lips tightened. "Open a channel," she ordered. "If they want to speak, they'll speak to me." The signal connected. The holographic screen filled with static, then shaped into the massive form of Commander Vacar. His armor shimmered with strange symbols. His skin looked carved from stone, his eyes like burning suns. Around him stood other Deathworlders, Kara among them, each radiating power and silence. "You are Commander Lyra of Earth," Vacar said, his voice echoing like thunder in a cave. "Yes," she replied firmly. "And you are Vacar of Crayon 7, you heard our call." "We did," Vacar said, leaning closer. "But tell me, human, why do you call for help if you still live?" Lyra took a slow breath. "Because survival alone is not living. We want more than to exist, we want to endure." For a moment there was silence. Even the Deathworlders exchanged faint glances. No species had ever spoken to them that way. "You are fragile," Kara said. "Your kind breaks easily. Yet your voice does not tremble." "We have lost too much to tremble," Lyra said quietly. "If death comes, we meet it standing." Vacar's eyes narrowed. "Brave words. But we do not help the weak. We study them. We test them. Then test us," she said. The room fell silent. Vacar tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "You wish to face the Deathworlder trial?" "I wish to prove we deserve to live," Lyra answered. Vacar smiled, the faintest curve of his scarred mouth. "So be it." Within hours, a smaller Deathworlder craft descended through the atmosphere, landing near the ruins of old New York. Its surface hissed with steam as metal unfolded into sharp spires. From its core, Vakar stepped out, towering above the broken buildings. Humans gathered at a distance, soldiers, engineers, survivors. They stared in awe and fear. Lyra descended from her shuttle, walking slowly toward him through the dust. The air was heavy with tension. When she finally stood before Vakar, she could see her reflection in the dark glass of his armor. "Where is your army?" he asked. "We have none," she said. "Only people who refuse to die quietly." Vakar's gaze shifted toward the distant humans, thin, hungry, covered in dirt but standing upright. Children clung to their parents, staring at him with wide eyes. He had expected terror, but what he saw instead was defiance. He turned back to Lyra. "This planet should have fallen long ago. Yet you still stand. That is unusual." "Because we remember who we are," Lyra said. "We remember Earth." Vakar studied her for a long moment, then lifted his arm. A blue sphere of energy formed in his hand. "This device," he said, "can show the truth of your species. It reads memory, history, and purpose. If you lie, it will end you." Lyra stepped forward. "Then use it." The orb flared, enveloping her in light. Images flooded the air. Wars, hunger, love, discovery, pain, laughter. The rise and fall of humanity played out like a dream. The Deathworlders watched in silence as they saw humans cry, build, destroy, and heal. They saw the burning cities, the art carved into ruins, the songs sung before death. When it ended, Vakar lowered his hand slowly. The light faded. "You have known endless pain," he said. "And still you smile?" "Yes," Lyra said. "Because pain taught us who we are. It made us human." Kara stepped forward. "They are strained," she muttered. "They feel too much." "That is why they survive," Vakar said softly. Then turning to Lyra, "The galaxy fears my kind, but today I see why it should fear yours." Before she could speak, a sudden explosion ripped through the clouds. Multiple ships appeared in the sky, sleek silver cruisers bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council. Their leader's voice echoed over the broadcast. "This system is under protection. Withdraw, Deathworlders, or face destruction." Vakar laughed, a low rumble that shook the ground. "They think they can protect you," he said. "How amusing," Lyra's eyes widened. "They'll start a war." "They already have," Vakar said. From above, Council ships fired warning shots. The Deathworlder fleet did not move. Then one of the Council missiles struck a Deathworlder cruiser. The response came instantly. One flash, one roar, and the Council ship disintegrated into white fire. Lyra's crew screamed as the blast lit the sky. Vakar's voice echoed calmly through the chaos. "This is what happens when the weak believe they rule the strong." She turned to him. "Stop this. You will destroy us all." He looked down at her, eyes cold but curious. "Tell your people to stand down, Commander, or the galaxy will burn because of you." Her comlink buzzed with hundreds of calls. Panic spread across Earth. "Vakar," she said, her voice trembling, "if you truly came because of our SOS, prove it. Protect us, not from the universe, but from ourselves." For the first time, the Deathworlder hesitated. He turned his gaze toward the wounded sky, where ships still clashed like fireflies in a storm. His voice dropped low. "Perhaps your trial has already begun." He looked back at her. "And perhaps you are worth saving." As the flames reflected in his armor, Lyra knew something had changed. The Deathworlders had come to judge humanity, but now they were beginning to understand it. The sky over Earth was no longer blue. It burned red and silver as the Galactic Council's fleets closed in from orbit, thousands of ships locking into battle formation. Earth had become the center of a war it never asked for. Every human colony went silent, every comm channel jammed with voices screaming the same question: "What is happening?" Commander Lyra stood inside the control deck of Sol Watch, her face pale under the crimson light. Through the wide glass window, she saw the first Council beam strike a Deathworlder ship. The explosion was bright enough to blind sensors. The shockwave hit seconds later, shaking the station until metal screamed. "Shields at 30%, shouted her engineer. "We cannot take another hit?" Lyra gripped the console. "Hold position. Do not fire unless ordered." Outside, chaos unfolded. The Deathworlder fleet, black as shadow, responded without hesitation. Massive cannons ignited along their hulls, each blast a roar of lightning. In a single strike, 3 Council cruisers vanished, nothing but ash in orbit. The rest scattered in panic. The silence that followed was worse than noise. On the Deathworlder flagship, Vakar watched the battle unfold from his command platform. "They never learn," he muttered. His tone was not anger, it was disappointment. Kara stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the burning horizon. "The Council will not forgive this," she said. "You have declared war on every empire in the stars." Vakar's gaze turned toward the small blue planet below. "Not war," he said quietly. "Correction," Kara frowned. "You mean mercy?" "No," Vakar said, his voice low. "They call Earth weak. Let us show them what weakness can inspire." He raised his hand. "Deploy the shields. Protect the planet." Energy flared across the Deathworlder ships, dark light, thick and alive, forming a barrier around Earth. Every Council attack that touched it dissolved like mist. The barrier shimmered like storm clouds, its glow reaching deep into the atmosphere. From the ground, survivors looked up, whispering prayers to the sky. Some believed angels had come. Others feared the end had arrived. Inside Saul Watch, Lyra could barely breathe. "They are protecting us," she whispered. "Why?" Her communication screen flickered to life. Vakar appeared again, surrounded by the glow of battle. "Commander Lyra," he said, his voice calm even as the stars behind him burned. "Your world is under my protection now. The Council calls it interference. I call it balance." Lyra's jaw tightened. "This is not protection, it's destruction. You will start a war that never ends." Baker's eyes softened slightly. "War never ends. It only changes its reason." Before she could answer, another blast rocked the station. A Council fleet from the Eastern Quadrant had bypassed the barrier and launched an assault on the Deathworlder shield generator, orbiting the moon. "Commander," shouted her lieutenant. "If that generator falls, the shield collapses." Lyra stared at the screen. "We can help them," she said suddenly. "Help them?" Another officer replied in disbelief. "They are monsters." Lyra turned sharply. "They are dying for us. If we do nothing, Earth dies with them." She took the controls manually. The old engines groaned as Saul Watch changed direction. "Prepare the railguns," she ordered. "Target those Council ships near the moon. We fire when I say." From the Deathworlder flagship, Kara watched in shock as the human station moved into the line of fire. "They are defending the generator," she said. Vakar's expression changed, something close to respect. "They fight even when they should run." He opened a channel. "Commander Lyra, your actions are unexpected. Call it human instinct," she replied. "We help those who help us." For the first time, Vakar smiled. The next minutes became a storm of light and sound. Saul Watch fired its railguns, the metal slugs tearing through Council hulls with brutal precision. The Deathworlder ships unleashed a counterstrike, obliterating the rest. Fire rained across the sky like falling stars. When the last Council cruiser broke apart, silence filled the void. Earth's orbit was littered with debris and drifting metal. Lyra slumped in her chair, exhausted. "Is it over?" Vakar's voice came through the comm. "For now. The Council will retreat, but not for long. Then we prepare," she said. Vakar studied her face on the screen. "You surprise me, human. When I first heard your signal, I expected fear. Instead, I found defiance." Lyra looked out at the damaged planet below. "Fear and hope are not enemies," she said. They walked together. Kara approached Vakar, whispering, "She speaks like one of us." "Perhaps she is," Vakar murmured. In the following days, the Deathworlders helped rebuild Earth's upper defenses. Their ships hovered like black guardians, their technology merging with human systems. For the first time in centuries, Earth's skies were peaceful. Yet beneath that peace, tension grew. Many humans did not trust their new allies. Some believed they were being prepared for conquest. Others saw them as saviors. On the streets of ruined cities, children painted Deathworlder ships in the sky and called them the Dark Angels. But Lyra knew the truth. The Deathworlders were not gods. They were survivors just like humans, and survivors always had a price. One evening, as the last light faded, she received another transmission from Vakar. "The Council gathers its armies," he said. "They will return stronger. If you stand with us, your world will no longer be a victim. It will be a voice, and if we refuse?" she asked. "Then you will face them alone," he replied, "and even your courage will not save you." The screen went dark. Lyra stood in silence, her reflection caught in the glass. She thought of the message that had started everything, the SOS she sent into the void. It was never just a cry for help. It was a spark. And now that spark had ignited a fire across the stars. The galaxy was changing, and Earth stood at the center. As she looked out into the night, The Deathworlder fleet shimmered above like a storm waiting to be unleashed again. And for the first time in history, humanity was no longer begging the stars to listen. It was preparing to answer back. The war ended with silence. For the first time in years, there were no explosions, no burning skies, only the faint hum of engines drifting through empty space. The Galactic Council fleets had retreated, leaving behind wreckage scattered like bones across the Black Sea. Earth had survived. Barely. Commander Lyra stood on the observation deck of Sol Watch, staring at the planet below. The atmosphere still shimmered with the remnants of the Deathworlder shield. Storms glowed faintly along the horizon, beautiful yet haunting. Whole cities were gone, but the people remained. Somehow they always did. Reports poured in from across the surface. Villages rebuilding, children painting on the walls again, radio frequencies filled with laughter for the first time in years. Yet above it all, the Deathworlder fleet remained, silent guardians watching from orbit. Their presence was both comforting and terrifying. Baker's flagship hung in the void, larger than any city. Inside, the Deathworlder commander stood before the central display, a hologram of Earth rotating slowly in the dark. Kara approached him quietly. "They rebuild fast," she said. "Faster than any species we have seen." Vakar nodded slowly. "Because they do not wait for hope. They make it." Kara studied him carefully. "You have changed, Vakar." He gave a faint smile. "Perhaps. The humans reminded me what strength really means." "Strength?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "It is not in how hard one strikes, but how long one stands after being struck." Below, Lyra watched from her station as a small Deathworlder probe descended through the clouds. It released thousands of crystalline devices that floated like glowing seeds. When they touched the ground, they began repairing soil, cleansing water, restoring energy fields. It was as if the planet itself began to breathe again. Her comlink buzzed. Vaker's voice filled the air. "Commander Lyra, the restoration has begun. Your world will heal, but it will take time. Use it well. Why help us?" she asked softly. "You have nothing to gain." There was a pause. "Because you reminded us who we were before the fire. We once fought to survive, then we forgot why." Lyra looked out at the faint blue glow spreading across the oceans. "Then maybe we reminded you of what it means to be alive." Vakar did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "Perhaps. Or perhaps your species carries something dangerous, the kind of will that can shake even the strongest." That night, from the deserts of old Africa to the icy plains of Siberia, people looked up and saw the Deathworlder ships ignite their engines. The sky filled with trails of dark light as the fleet began to ascend. Panic rippled briefly, but then the realization came. They were leaving. Lyra's chest tightened as she watched from Sol Watch. "They are going," she whispered. Her engineer looked at her. "After all this, they just leave?" "Yes," she said. "They were never here to rule us, only to see if we could stand." Moments later, the main screen flickered. Vakar appeared one last time. His face, once fierce and cold, now carried the calm of someone who had seen too much. "Commander," he said, "we have left something for you." "What is it?" she asked. He lifted his hand, revealing a crystal the size of his palm, glowing faintly blue. "A beacon. When your kind reaches beyond this system, it will guide you, not to us but to what you must become." Lyra's throat tightened. "Will we see you again?" Vakar's gaze softened. "Perhaps when the stars tremble once more." The transmission ended. Seconds later, the Deathworlder fleet jumped to light speed. The black ship streaked across the heavens, vanishing into the void. The light they left behind shimmered for hours like faint ripples on water. Days passed. Earth began to heal in ways no one could explain. Plants grew in toxic soil. The air cleared. Oceans cooled. It was as if the planet had been given a second heartbeat. Humanity worked side by side, rebuilding cities with Deathworlder materials. They learned fast, adapting faster. Lyra spent her days walking through the ruins, talking to survivors. Every face carried the same quiet determination. There were no more borders now, no flags, only one name that united everyone: humanity. Weeks later, she visited the site where the first Deathworlder ship had landed. The ground there was fused into black glass. In the center stood the crystal Vakar had left behind, resting in a small crater. It pulsed gently like a living thing. Lyra knelt beside it and touched its surface. Instantly, a projection filled the air. Images of stars, distant galaxies, and paths leading outward. Among them, a message appeared in Deathworlders script, then translated into English. "We remember strength." Her eyes watered as she whispered the words. Around her, the wind carried the faint hum of life returning to the land. The crystal's glow reflected in her eyes like a promise.